One world currency.
A new world order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's live edition. It is April 19th, 2013, the 20th anniversary of Waco, the 18th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombings. I can remember both. Actually, I can remember watching Waco going on the news. I can remember being a firefighter by the time the Oklahoma City bombing happened. I actually have the copy of Newsweek that with the picture of the firefighter holding a baby, a child's body from the rubble, and the rubble in the background. It was this famous shot, and I have I still have the Newsweek, the actual whole magazine in full. I bought it at the newsstand that day, and I put it in a frame that night, and I hung it up on my wall. And I actually still have that thing to this day. I'm actually turning around and I'm looking at it right now as I'm talking to you. Just amazing that 18 years has gone by and 20 since Waco. But what do we have today? Something else happening on the 19th of April. Something very familiar. Something I believe I said that was going to take place 2 days ago and again last night. Now, interesting that they're quote-unquote Chechnyan. But I heard this morning the term homegrown terrorism thrown around with these two. One of the local talking heads down here on AM was saying, well, the one guy has only been here for like a year, but the other one's been here for, they said, like 10 years. So would that make it a case of homegrown terrorism then? This was the conversation they were having on the radio this morning down here. So, and then from what I understand, one of them supposedly on his Twitter account is a truther, and the other one's a Muslim. Really? So one of them's a hardcore Muslim jihadist, wants to kill people, and the other one's a 9/11 truther. How does that work together? That they end up in the same car, shooting it out with cops and blowing things up. I'm not making this up. So my analysis was a little off. They didn't blame one person. It's two people, but, a pack, a group, one small little team. But they killed one of them today. Let's see if, I know the other one surrendered, but let's see what happens to him because he's injured, remember. We'll get into it more on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a minute. All right, we are back. Nice long segment so I can get into this. So, on Wednesday, I said that by Friday, and I didn't think really by, I said on Friday they'll get them. And they'll either it'll be one guy or a few people, but they'll, at least a few of them will die in a shootout, if not all of them. I'm actually surprised that they didn't kill the younger kid, probably because there was so much media coverage and so many people paying attention. It would have been harder for them just to execute the kid. So, they say, oh well, we want to take them alive if possible. We would love to get intel out of them. Really? Why didn't you do that with Dorner or anybody else that you guys ever deal with? So come on. I think partially, and maybe a little bit of common sense prevailed. Maybe somebody in the chain of command there, up in Boston today, said no, keep the guy alive. But honestly, I think most of it is because there was just so many eyes on them. If the cameras had been turned away and they had the chance, I'm sure there would have been a shootout and it would have ended much differently. But let's see what happens to the young lad. He's 19, so let's see what happens to him. If he makes it in jail, or if a Jack Ruby style vigilante comes out and shoots the kid while he's being transferred or something like that. We'll see if that happens. Who knows? But they went after him today. Shootout occurred. They say, of course, that these guys started shooting at them. Although, if you go back to a little bit after midnight, I would say probably like around 1:30, 2 o'clock, you'll start to see reports that the mainstream media this really early this morning saying, oh, they've got people in custody. Huh? They've got people in custody? How come you don't hear those reports anymore? Suddenly the reports went from they've got people in custody to they're in a firefight. So if they had these guys in custody, how did they end up into a knockout, brawl, street fight, Heat style? And if you've never seen the movie Heat, okay, go watch it. And I just, the reports don't match up when you listen. So, and of course I've been paying attention all day, running around doing, my normal daily routine, whatever I have to do, but keeping an eye on this stuff. And there's other reports popping up, I noticed. Like I believe it was a CNN videographer recorded a guy getting arrested, and they made him strip down in the street. They made the guy strip down in the street. Cameras rolling, skivvies off everything, nude, full on. Now, what happened to that guy? The naked guy. There's a lot of shadiness going on. So again, anyway, the other day I had mentioned that I thought that they would get them today, and as you can see, I was correct. Now, again, to be quite fair, full analysis wasn't correct because I did say that it would probably be maybe I have a feeling they're going to try to blame one guy, but I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before when they supposedly caught a suspect. I think it was. I believe it was that night. I think it was Wednesday night. They supposedly caught a suspect, and they stormed a courthouse and everything else. Well, from what I've seen, that one lone suspect that they originally had, and then they first reported they had him, and then they didn't, and then people stormed the courthouse and all this other hullabaloo, and then they said, no, it was disinformation and bad reporting. Well, I've seen some reports by a few different individuals that say, no, that was the original Patsy, and he was supposed to be a gun-loving NRA, member, blah, 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 right-winger. And for whatever reason, that started to fall apart. And, especially with the pictures coming out around the same time of the guys on the street in the khaki pants that looked like mercenaries. So then the story changed up a little bit. Now all of a sudden these guys pop out. Yesterday they had different names that was confirmed. This person is the person we're looking for in connection to the bombing, and they were releasing names, and now all of a sudden these guys' names are different than the names that they were talking about yesterday. And then now we have a firefight, and I saw a picture of what is said to be the one guy, and the face. And the body structure and size and everything match up. And I've seen a picture of him laying dead in, I guess it's a hospital, where it looks to be a hospital or a morgue or whatever facility, some sort of facility. You could see him on a hospital bed, and he's deader than a doornail. There is no life in his body, and he's got a huge, huge hole in his left side going up through his rib cage. It could be probably from a bomb blast, piece of shrapnel or something going off, whatever. Interesting how these guys, they're saying that they were throwing out. We'll have to see, I guess, what the authorities say were the official bombs going off. But I've heard everything from hand grenades to they were chucking out pressure cooker bombs, like the ones that they had used in the parade or the marathon rather. Which, I mean, I guess it's possible, but I mean, this is almost, now they're making it sound like an action movie where they were chasing them through the streets and these guys are weaving in and out of traffic, chucking, bombs out of the back. It's almost like a video game. That's the guy you're going after and you have to, I don't know. I mean, and if it was that, okay, but still the pressure cooker thing, what did they use? What kind of explosives did they use? Blah, 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 blah. We have to question that, question these kids' connections. Okay, but if they were throwing hand grenades, well, how the hell are they throwing hand grenades out? I mean, who gave them hand grenades? Only the military gets hand grenades. It's not like I can go over to the local gun shop and be like, hey, John, yeah, I'm going to have, I need a box of 357 SIG, give me a case of 223, and let me get a couple anti-personnel mines over there. Yeah, a Claymore would be lovely if you have a couple of those. That would be perfect, some Claymore mines. And can I get a 6-pack of grenades? No, I want the pineapple grenades. Yes, I don't want a regular frag. I want the pineapple grenades. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, 6 pineapple grenades. Thank you. Just put that on my tab. Thank you. Oh, I love the Second Amendment. It allows me to buy explosives. I mean, people, get real. And by the way, this whole thing, I'm going to sidetrack myself here for a second. This whole thing should serve as an example of a joke that the mainstream media is. Seriously. Chris Matthews, it's got to be a right-winger. CNN, it's got to be a right-wing, probably some tax day, Patriots Day, people are pissed off about guns. It's got to be the guns. And then you get Michael Moore, Tax Day, Patriots Day. Or Jay Moore, last name is spelled differently. They're not related, but they're both morons. It's the Second Amendment. Blame the Second Amendment. Because, like I said, you can go into John's local gun shop and be like, I'll take a Claymore and a 6-pack of pineapple grenades. Thank you very much. Hello? People, the only people that have access to high explosives like that are military and police. So, or somebody who works for like a blasting company, and they only have access to certain types of explosives. It's not like you can go over to Control Demolition Inc. and pick up Claymore mines from them either. Although that company has some shady ties to a couple different things, but I don't want to digress too much. And although if you want to look up who took care of the Murrow Federal Building and leveled it, that was controlled demolition. I find it interesting that the Oklahoma City bombing, actually, even though it's a false flag event and they try to say, oh, it's terrorists, blah, 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 look, killed kids. That whole bombing disputes 9/11, if you think about it, or at least a part of 9/11. It helps dispute it, the official story. How? Well, when you look at Building 7 and you look at the Murrow Federal Building, how did Building 7, which wasn't even hit by a plane, it was supposedly hit by some debris and fires, right? And that's what brought it down was the fires. How come that building came down into symmetrically into this little pile without destroying buildings or, anything around it, into this pile, right? Just falls down due to fire. The Murrow Federal Building, even if you only believe the official story and it was just an ANFO bomb, which it wasn't, it was much more, you could see there was a whole scoop of the building that was carved out by the blast. And that thing still stood. In fact, they didn't have to knock it down. The engineers had gone in and shored it up and said, yeah, it's structurally sound, it's fine, you could do an investigation, go ahead. They didn't have to knock the building down. They could have even fixed it. The building was it was sound enough that they could have gone in there and they could have retrofitted it. And they could have saved the building. They didn't have to knock the building down. It did not need to come down. So why then did Congress want that building to come down into a neat little pile? Why did it have to get cleaned up so fast? It was a crime scene. And why did it require a controlled demolition to bring it down into this neat little pile when on 9/11, all you had to do apparently was light fires from some jet fuel, and that seems to take care of everything. Some jet fuel / office fires. Makes buildings go right down into their own footprint, just like a controlled demolition. Interesting. So I guess we don't have to pay CDI all of these thousands and thousands of dollars, right, to bring down buildings for the government. Ooh, did I say that? Bring down buildings for the government. CDI brings down buildings for the government. I'll just leave that open-ended like that. Anyway, getting back to this whole thing. I think this is a contrived mess. And as I said the other day, they started it on Monday. They're going to end it on Friday. They have the whole week to ramp up everybody's fear. Now it's all wrapped up before the nightly news. Remember, I said I guaranteed they have these guys dead before noon, right? Okay, well, the one was dead before noon. The other one's been on the run, and he was hiding, scared for whatever reason. God knows whatever's going through the kid's mind. He's only 19. And then they found him, and for a multitude of reasons, coming together, they didn't kill him, which actually I'm surprised about that. But they killed the one, and it was before noon today. When did this whole melee start? I said don't be surprised if it starts early in the morning, right? When did this firefight supposedly start? When did this whole melee start where they suddenly found him? Early in the morning. See, that way they can kill. See, I'm willing to bet the plan was to kill them both before noon and then have it on the news cycle. But now they have it all wrapped up for the evening news cycle. Nice little red bow. We got him. Now I'm sure they'll interrogate the kid, and he's wounded, and maybe he'll die of sepsis, or again, maybe something will happen to him. Who knows? Maybe he actually will make it to trial, but I'll be surprised if they actually let it get to trial. I'm sure. You know what? It probably won't get to trial. Just like Loeffner and all this other crap, they'll get the kid behind bars. They'll get him to plead guilty because he's 19. He's young. He'll never see. That's one of the only reasons I'm willing to bet. That's probably the only reason that they'd be willing to take the kid alive. Is because they'll get him to plead guilty, they'll lock him up, they'll put him in either a mental institution or a prison for the rest of his life, and that's what we'll be told. Now, will he really be in that prison? Who knows? Nobody will know for sure, will we? Right? Do we even know if Loeffner is still in prison right now? Oh, Popeye, don't be a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm serious. Do you or me or anybody out there right now know for a physical fact that kid is behind bars at all? I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying, do we know for a fact? So how do we know that after maybe this kid is convicted or whatever, they won't ship him off somewhere? What about the Saudi? What about that guy? Remember the Saudi national they said they had? Oh, he's not a person of interest. Why is he being deported on Tuesday of next week? Anybody know about that? You know what the government is saying? He's being deported due to national security reasons. And I believe, even in the documents, it says that it's related to the Boston Marathon bombing. Interesting. But he's not a person of interest. Saudis. Where have I seen that before? Chechnyans. Where have I seen the Chechnyans before? I do recall talking about the Chechnyan angle of this a while ago. I'll have to get into that on the other side of the break. Yeah, I think it's worth going over again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is so contrived, it's not even funny. They got their guy, April 19th, their little high satanic holiday. And they got their sacrifice. One of them's dead. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. And I've been chatting with people on Skype and messaging with people, all different social media during the break. And Ken, one of the hosts here, changed the channel, brought up a really good point. He said, why in the world are they closing the investigation in the first place, acting like Bush's mission accomplished? How do they know there aren't more before questioning him? They're so full of it. I mean, it's so transparent you can see through it. this whole thing is just see-through. It's so transparent. Now, when I heard Chechens, I was like, wow, Chechnya. And everybody that I've spoken to so far today has asked me the same thing. Why would... I don't get it. I mean, okay, the Al-Qaeda Muslim connection, but Chechnya? I don't... Well, if anybody goes back and you look to like 2004, we'll say. We'll use this as an example. Fallujah, Operation Phantom Fury 2. When our Marines and soldiers went back in on the ground and they were killing block by block these fighters that were battling it out with them, they were coming upon machine gun nest after machine gun nest, and they were finding, like, I mean, some of them would have bags of cocaine or methamphetamines or whatever. They would have there was drugs. Sometimes they would find heroin. In Fallujah, this is supposed to be like terrorists, they're making bombs and killing people and plotting murder and death, and they found out they're fighting a lot of these Chechnyan terrorists in Fallujah, Iraq. This is supposed to be, homegrown insurgents and blah, 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 and Al-Qaeda Arab fighters, and you have guys that are Chechnyan terrorists. And what are they doing in Iraq? Well, they're, bolstering the ranks, guns for hire. You'll find out that the intelligence agencies, especially the CIA, likes to use them to bolster the ranks throughout the world. So, you have, if you look back to 2004 and you look Fallujah, where you see these guys our Marines and soldiers were fighting these guys, right? I had Dahlia Wasfi on, Dr. Dahlia Wasfi, and her husband was a Marine on the ground at the time in Fallujah. And I had told her this story, and she had said she didn't know about it. She was surprised, so she said, "I'll have to go home and I'll talk to him and I'll ask him. I'll confirm it with him." And she did. She emailed me the next day and she verified that her husband had verified to her the story that I had told her, that it was in fact very true, that that's what they were running into when they were over there. So it does not surprise me one bit that they would use Chechnyans, because there is a connection between Chechnyan quote-unquote terrorists, right? These Muslims, the Chechnyan terrorists, and these intelligence agencies, okay? Just like there's connections with quote-unquote Al-Qaeda to the CIA, because Al-Qaeda really means the database, and it was just a database that they housed all the Mujahideen freedom fighters in, and blah, 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 blah. Again, this list of names, this list of people that they could use, right? So who are these two guys? We really don't know. I mean, they're young, right? The one is he's not alive anymore. The boxer, the bigger of the two, I guess the older brother. He's the, now I'm not sure which one. I think the younger one is the one. Again, this is going off from what the mainstream media is putting out there so far, because that's all I know about which one's which. But the younger one, I think, is the one that's the devout Muslim or whatever, or the jihadist one. And the boxer one, I think, was the one that loved being an American and everything else. So it's just two different personalities. It's so shady. And of course, terrorism always has links to the illegal drug trade, because that's how they fund things. And it's disgusting. The more you understand about what's going on, the bigger the headache you have when you look at this kind of crap. Anyway, so one of them's dead, one of them's alive. What do you think they're going to do with him? The alive one. I mean, the dead one, he's dead. What do you think they're going to do with the alive one? He'll probably put on drugs, all sorts of medications to, keep him doped up. Oh, we have to keep him. He's a danger. He's a terrorist. He's evil. He's a bomber. He made bombs. He's a mad bomber. If we don't dope him up, he'll run around bombing people. Bomb, 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 bomb. Fear, 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 fear. That's what they're going to... You watch. You watch how much legislation tries to get passed over this. They've already had congressmen and senators making comments and saying things like, this is the perfect example of... You heard me play the one clip last night, the one talking about CISPA. Look, this is why we should pass CISPA. It would have prevented things like that. Really? CISPA would have prevented pressure cooker bombs? Talk about jumping on any tragedy to get your way. So who are the real scumbags? We'll be right back. You want to know the real reason for this whole scary ordeal? Let's look at the outcome. Let's look at what they tried to pass and what they try to regulate in order to quote-unquote prevent this. Now, let me ask you a question before I even get into this. How is adding any more laws or bills or anything going to save us? Adding more police or more government agents or more dickheads running around in black SWAT gear, how is that going to save us? Did it save anybody the day of the Boston bombing? Did all of our intel that we have, this grand intel organization, did it save anybody? Did this huge police state stop anything? No, it didn't. Did the FBI stop this bomber? No, they didn't. You know why? They were too busy. Well, at least one of their agents was too busy setting, and I can't remember Rich's last name, but an activist up to go to jail for selling pot. So you're going to focus on people that are maybe selling or smoking or growing marijuana. Or maybe you should be focusing on this, huh? You're focusing on the home front. White terrorists, these people that think government are crazy, they're nuts. Veterans, oh my God, veterans! We must take away their guns. Oh, gun owners! Well, while you morons are all focused on us, if we're to believe the official story that this wasn't pulled off by the government, right, and that this was pulled off by some Chechen terrorists for whatever reason, okay, an outside source will say, not you guys pulling it off, you still fail. Your police state is a failure, an epic failure, because this goes to show you that you cannot protect any of us from bad people, and legislating away my freedom and everybody else's doesn't work. Fail. Police state, fail. You, fail. All your friends, fail. Pack your crap and go, Gestapo. Leave. If we're to believe your official story, you're inept and you suck and you don't deserve any more money. You should all be fired. Oh, it's because of the sequester cuts. What do you want to bet that gets blamed? Well, we probably would have had this intel, but the sequester cuts affected DHS. Really? Really? Didn't seem to affect you buying armored vehicles and all sorts of new toys for your men. No, don't give me that crap. If we're to believe the government's official story that they're trying to hand out right now, police state, epic failure. You didn't protect crap. Shut it all down and rethink the whole damn thing. Because obviously it don't work. Now, what else did I say? I said, in the wake of this, you're going to see legislation coming out, right? Trying to regulate everything. Well, guess what? Senator proposed bill regulating black powder in the wake of Boston massacre. On April 17th, New Jersey Senator Frank Lautenberg issued a statement to the public that he intends to propose a bill or amendment to regulate black powder and other forms of explosive components in the wake of the Boston Marathon massacre. Well, I hate to tell you, Senator Lautenberg, and Frank's a big putz. But I hate to tell you and inform you of this, Senator Lautenberg, but I could go to the store and I could buy ingredients at the food store that could technically make something that would pressurize, and if it was put inside of a container and that the pressure inside the container became greater than the pressure on the outside of the container, or that the container itself could hold, well, then we all know what happens. Basic science. Boom. You could do it with baking soda. You could do it with dry ice, which you could go buy. You could put dry ice in water and the pressure builds up, and they call it a dry ice bomb because it's a release of pressure when it detonates outside of the, again, the bottle can't hold it anymore. Boom! Are you going to regulate dry ice now? People can't buy dry ice? I guess no more parties with mist and smoke coming across the floor for cool effects, because Frank Lautenberg is going to go after anything that has explosive potential, including black powder, which is what I said the other day. Ball bearings, too, I'll bet, are next. Nails, pressure cookers. Don't be silly. Why would we regulate pressure cookers? It was the black powder's fault, after all. If the damn Second Amendment and you gun lovers weren't around, this bombing never would have happened. Right. Sure. blame everybody else, but obviously the people who are at fault, right? Because again, if we're to believe even your official story, you suck. You and your police state suck. Your bazillions of dollars that you've wasted over the past 12 years is unacceptable. We need to start getting it back somehow, so we're going to liquidate all of you instantly, fire all of you, okay? That'll start saving a lot of money. No more checks. You're all fired. And then the equipment that you're obviously not using and you really shouldn't need anyway, well, we'll sell that. We'll scrap it, do whatever. And whatever money we can get back from that, then we'll figure out what we'll do, and maybe we can upgrade our defenses in a different way, a more logical way. But then again, I'll bet if we got rid of you and your Gestapo and your police state and the powers it shouldn't be, I'm willing to bet a lot of these terror attacks, if not all of them, would stop. Most of them because you do them, you pull them off yourselves, right? And then the ones that maybe if there really was a real one here and there, well, maybe if we weren't invading people's countries and killing their families and, maybe if we checked out our foreign policy. I know. Our foreign policy cannot be talked about. If it were not for America, all these countries would be in peril. We help everybody. So when we bomb people, we shouldn't be questioned because, hey, we give out money to this country, or we give aid to this country, or we go and we rescue people when there's a tsunami here or when there's an earthquake there. So it doesn't matter if we go in and invade countries, Sovereignty? Pfft, what's sovereignty? What's a war crime? Can't talk about U.S. foreign policy, right? Can't bring that up. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked. The point is, it's crap. Right? If this really was an attack, right, and this was Al-Qaeda, whoever, the boogeyman, whoever you want to associate this with, if it really was this, pissed off terrorist, blowback, whatever, then their police state is shown to be completely and utterly useless. And now they're going to go after black powder because it's black powder's fault and it's reloaders' fault. You can see the whole article over on the IntelliHub. The bill would demand full federal background checks of anyone seeking to purchase the minor explosive, similar to recent attempts by Congress to require full background checks on the sale of firearms. So now, Frank Lautenberg, who's a Democrat, and he doesn't like guns. Trust me, I grew up in New Jersey. That state needs to do, the people of that state need to do something. There's a lot of good people in New Jersey. You people need to rise up and throw your politicians out. They all suck. They're scumbags. It's one of the reasons I left. I'll repeat that again. The bill would demand full federal background checks of anyone seeking to purchase black powder. Are you a reloader? Well, you could be a terrorist. And I'm sure the bill will probably have some sort of license in it. I mean, it's got to be. First of all, anybody would have a brain, and you look at it, you saw the white smoke come up. It was either black powder or, like Joe made a good point, it could be tannerite. But more than likely, just black powder. Anybody that's ever taken black powder and put it in a coffee can and blown a stump up in their backyard knows what I'm talking about. When I was a kid, you could get away with doing that. Now you'd be considered Al-Qaeda. That's how we used to get rid of stumps in the backyard when I was a kid. Take a 5-pound coffee can, fill it up, and then there's a few other things you have to do. It's not that simple, but I won't give out the recipe. That would be horrific. But nowadays, I mean, that's an old school trick of getting rid of stumps in the yard. Instead of digging them out, you blow them up, and whatever pieces land, you scrape up and then do whatever with it. Throw it away, whatever, compost it, whatever. But anybody that's ever been around black powder, when those things went off, and they looked at it, they would say, wow, that looks like black powder. I said it the first day. I was like, it looks like black powder. Joe and I talked about it a couple times. He mentioned tannerite, which it could have been too. But now I guarantee you this bill will go after that too. Because it says, yes, it says black powder, but again, it also says, and other forms of explosive components. Well, tannerite is what they use to make exploding targets. It's not illegal. But more than likely, just black powder. I said it the first day. I was like, it looks like black powder. I guarantee you this bill will go after that, too. Because, again, it also says, and other forms of explosive components. Well, tannerite is what they use to make exploding targets. It's not illegal. FPS Russia is a great example of it. If you watch his videos on his YouTube channel, you'll see when they would shoot things and it would explode. That's tannerite. I'm sure that'll get regulated. I'm sure they'll want to regulate. I mean, they want to regulate everything. It's for your safety, because terrorism only happens because you have freedom. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? If I have to live in a society where everything is locked down for my safety, then I don't want to live in that society. I'd rather live in a free and open society. And if the cost of living in a free and open society is that I have to be vigilant because somebody might do something bad because there are freedoms that they could take advantage of, well then, I must be vigilant. See, freedom really isn't free. It's not. Now, they use that tagline when they send you overseas, over to Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever other hellhole they want to send you to go fight and kill people. And they say, freedom's not free. Our soldiers and our Marines die for your freedom. No, they don't. But that's not the term, that's not the way I'm using the phrase that freedom isn't free. Real, true liberty and freedom is not free, and it requires everyone to be ever vigilant at all times. So, if my duty is to be vigilant and pay attention, and out of that I get to live in a free and open society, it's worth it. I would rather be free and not have someone looking over my shoulder and telling me what to do and banning everything than live in a world of fake safety. Because you still live in the same dangerous world, ladies and gentlemen. It's just you think you don't. You've been pacified. So when bad things happen, you're even more traumatized. And don't think that the powers that shouldn't be don't know this and don't use it to their full advantage. Why do you think people get so upset when bad things happen? Traumatic things happen. It's harder for people to handle it nowadays than it used to be. Manipulation on a huge, massive scale. And that's what you've been seeing going on for a week. It's called a psychological operation. This is nothing new. None of this is new. This is all old school techniques used against us time and time again. That is, of course, until people start to wake up. And then they start to do things like whoever on 4chan did, and go through the video and pictures and start to point out things here and there and this and that and the other thing. Oh, can't have that. See, that's why they want to shut the internet down with things like CISPA. Oh, yeah. CISPA. And other bills. Other horrific, crappy, tyrannical legislation. Because it's not about you not being able to watch free porn. It's about the internet being an open form of communication between everybody. And they don't want that, because then it's harder to pull off things like this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. We'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment of the first hour, but we still have the second hour, so don't go anywhere. In the second hour, I have something I'm going to play for you. I know there's a lot of new listeners. I've only played this once ever before, and it was a while ago, so I'm going to bring this back to the airwaves for you all. It's an actual, it's audio from an actual film put together by the U.S. Army back from in the 50s. It's a psychological warfare training video. And I want you to I'm going to play it because I want you to pay close attention to what is being said. Because if you pay attention, you will see that the very same techniques that were first mastered to be used abroad have since been brought back home and used against us here. But I'll get into that in hour two. first, I want to play this clip really quick for you because I said that I was going to play some stuff from the family earlier. Here is a video from the local Fox, I think it was the local DC Fox affiliate there, Fox 5. And they actually got somebody to get in touch for a brief few minutes with the father of these two kids that were killed, the bombers, suspects, whatever you want to call them. And they only talked to him for a few minutes. I also have some stuff I'm going to play. I have a clip I want to play for you guys from RT with the mother being interviewed. And the mother's been interviewed by a few people. There's a couple video clips out there, and you'll see her saying that she doesn't believe it, and the father doesn't believe that. They think that they were set up by the intelligence community. And I know, people can say, well, they're just not my Johnny parents. Well, I mean, let me ask you a question. How many parents, if your kid did something bad, right? If you got a call, oh, your kid blew people up and killed people, would you automatically right off the bat go, oh, the intelligence community did it? Would you? Think about it. Or would you be like, oh my God, my kid did what? My son did what? And their first thought was, the intelligence community did it. And then there's from what I understand, his mother said that they had been FBI informants or one of them had been at least working with the FBI for some period of time or something to that effect. So, I mean, there's a lot of shadiness, ladies and gentlemen. Would that be a big surprise, by the way, to have an FBI connection to a terror plot? Flashes of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing all over again. But I digress. Here's the audio clip really quick.
All right, our Annie Yu is with us now, and Annie is with us because we very recently spoke with the father of these two men. We have told you that they are brothers. Originally, they're Chechen brothers, and we spoke with the uncle earlier. Now, the father does still live in Russia. We were able to get him by phone. One of our producers, Maurice Kern, who was fluent in Russian, was able to speak with him. Annie is here with a translation of what he said.
Right. I was in the room with Maurice as we called the father. And we were surprised he actually picked up the phone. Now, they are about 8 hours ahead of us, so it's about, 4:35 in the evening over there. Father picked up the phone, and we were able to confirm that these are his children, that they came here in 2001 as students to study. And the last time the father saw his sons here in Boston were last year. And he got sick and had to go back home. What's interesting is that they have more family in the States. He has 2 more daughters in New York, and we obviously spoke to the uncle in Maryland. He described his children as true angels and said that they are innocent, that they were framed, set up, got very angry, and hung up the phone after about 3 to 4 minutes of speaking with us.
So he did, and that rings true with the uncle, just completely could not fathom that these boys, the boys that he knew, he had last seen them,
Exactly.
he said admittedly in 2005, but could not imagine that these would be the same 2 that would go on and plant these 2 bombs that ended up killing 3 people. And we haven't talked about the victims here. This is where it all started. 3 people, a 29-year-old woman, an 8-year-old boy, and a graduate student from China.
And speaking of the 8-year-old boy, the father did say, why would my sons kill children? So
that's the question we are all asking.
Yeah.
So I guess if a 3 or 4 minute conversation, you're not able to get a lot out of him. But he says he saw them as recently as a year ago.
Last year, he got sick. It was a short trip and had to go back home. But, he did see them. And we didn't get to the next question, which was, when was the last time you spoke to them? Which is what I was wondering. And again, it was about 3 to 4 minutes long before he hung up the phone. And before he hung up the phone, his last words were describing his children as true angels and that they were framed and set up.
Obviously, with all of this happening, as is whenever it's the case where someone has done something, a heinous crime, and the parents and family can't believe it. You just can't. And I understand that. So we'll see what happens in the days ahead when we talk to more family members and the like. Thank you very much, Annie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right.
I want to know what evidence they have that says that these guys are the suspects. Lay the evidence out. Oh, we can't. Why? You can lay the evidence out. I think you owe at least that to the general public after having martial law in Boston and going around and checking people's houses. Talk about getting people ready Look at the pictures. And then you have local politicians and state politicians and, Mumbles Menino over there. Oh, this is the new normal. No, this isn't the new normal. Take your Gestapo and stick it. We're going to break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. It is April 19th, 2013. One more hour before this high evil day starts to be over here in the United States. For those of you that don't know, there are people that worship Baal, Satan, Nimrod, whatever you want to call him. And this worship has gone on through different civilizations for thousands of years, and this is nothing new. And there are still people to this day that take part in this practice, and that is why you see horrific evil events involving fiery sacrifice. And in modern-day police-state America, fiery sacrifice can involve gunfire or literal fire or explosives, which you saw today. Do you think it's any coincidence that they caught the guys today, or caught up with the guys today and had a firefight with them? No. Do you think it's any coincidence that in this week, this time period from, we'll say, even going, we'll say starting around like the 15th to the 19th. And you can even go back a day or two on either side, but starting from like the 15th all the way to the 1st of May, really. And what happened on the 1st of May not too long ago, a couple years ago? Anybody remember? Bueller? Oh, that's right. The 15th or 16th death of Osama bin Laden. I lost count, so I can't remember which actual number it is because the guy died so many times. But yes, May 1st. May Day. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not coincidental. And if somebody is telling you that it is and is trying their hardest to convince you that it all is coincidental and there's nothing to see here, then they're insulting your intelligence and they think you're a moron. That ought to piss you off. Instead of arguing with me or arguing with other educated people that understand what's going on, or I should actually not say educated, but enlightened individuals that understand what's going on, you should listen. Because the wool has been pulled over your eyes. We are not crazy. This is very real. People don't like to hear about Satanism and sacrifice and worshiping, deities, whatever, Babylonian, Assyrian, whatever, Phoenician, although this covers all of it. They don't want to hear about that. That's scary or kooky. It's too much. That's too much outside of their comfort zone. That doesn't happen. You're crazy. Happens all the time. There's a reason that we have these huge massacres and explosions and all this other crap around this time period. Even Lincoln's assassination. Who's connected to that? Albert Pike. Huge Satanist. Evil, evil man. One of the founders of the Ku Klux Klan. You should ask yourself why there's a statue commemorating him outside the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. That's a good question. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. And I'm going to just spend the rest of this hour. I'm going to point out a few other the shady things. I'm going to play the audio from one of the audio clips that I have of the mother getting interviewed over on Russia Today, because it's actually one of the best ones I've seen, interviews of her. And because all the other videos of her are kind of like sporadic. It's cut up like, well, there's one I saw from PBS, but it looks like whoever recorded it or ripped the video or whatever, they got it like in the middle of what was going on. So a lot of the stuff is kind of out of context. So the videos about the interview with her is about 6.5 minutes, but I want to let you guys hear the full audio. But before I play it, I'm going to focus. I'm going to play that, but then I'm going to focus the rest of the night on exposing psychological operations to you, like what it is a psychological operation and things like that. because you need to understand that. If you don't, there's a lot of awake individuals out there, but if you don't understand a basic, have a basic comprehension, a basic understanding on a basic level, you won't understand what you just witnessed this whole week. But now that you've witnessed it, right, and it's the hubbub and the media hype is starting to ebb down now and die down. I mean, I was listening when I was food shopping before I got on air tonight on my FM receiver on my MP3 player, and literally it was amping fear all day, bam, 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 and then in the middle I was doing my my grocery shopping, I hear, well, they got him, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, everybody, and they cranked the levers of fear down, they cranked down the, ooh, amp it down, ooh, it's okay, we've got him, it's okay. So because it's a huge psychological operation, right, and before you had all this fear being pumped out, that might have blocked some of you being receptive to certain things. Now that it's and it's all calm, they got him, people are going to, debating, if the guy's going to live, he's in critical condition right now because they did shoot him, but he's still alive, but from what I understand, thanks to Chris Steiner, We Are Change Tampa, he's in the chat, he posted earlier that the guy's got a ventilator mask and everything else, and he brought up a good point, they'll probably just put him in a medically induced coma, and then that'll be it, the guy will probably slip, he died. It was such a shame. He died. But anyway, I want to play the interview with his mother, and then I want to expose psychological operations to you, because if I can expose the machinations of it, if you can have a basic understanding of some of the tools of psychological operations, and of course what better of a place to get it than right from the U.S. Army itself. And the reason I want to show you, even though it was from the 50s, and I want you to listen to it, is because, yes, ladies and gentlemen, they still use this against us to this day. And a lot of this stuff that was developed for these foreign countries was eventually turned around and used here on us at home, even though it's illegal. Not supposed to happen, but they do it anyway. So first, let's play the interview with the mother from Russia Today. Here you go. The Boston Marathon manhunt. The mother of the two accused, and I'm going to say accused because, again, until I see the evidence, it's like, where's the evidence that bin Laden actually did 9/11? Haven't seen it yet. But I digress. Here's the interview with the mom.
It's coming up. And I can tell you now on the line, we've got the mother of one of the two suspects. So Diet Sanava on the line with me now. Very good evening to you. Thank you for taking the time at what must be a very difficult time for you to come and speak to anyone at this time, and for your family as well. So thanks for being with us. I'm sure, but what can you tell me about your sons and your thoughts of what they're accused of tonight?
Okay, can I speak now?
Yes, you are indeed. You're live on RT.
Thank you. Well, what can I tell? It's really really like a hard thing to hear, and being a mother, what I can say is I am really sure, I am like 100% sure that this is a setup. My two sons are really innocent, and I know that neither of them never have talked about whatever they're saying about now. And what I want to say is, both of them were my youngest one was raised from 8 years. He was raised in America, and my oldest son, he is they're really properly raised, and in our house nobody talked about the terrorism. And my son Tamerlan really got involved in the religion, religious politics 5 years ago. So he started following his own religious aspects, and he never told me that he would would be like on the side of jihad, and whatever they're talking, whatever is talking about him being a loser, themselves are the losers. My son would never do this. My son, it is a set up. He was controlled by FBI like for 5 years. They knew what my son was doing. They knew what actions and what the sites on internet he was going. They used to come home. They used to come and talk to me. They used to tell me that that they are controlling his. They were telling me that he's a really a serious leader, and they are afraid of him. They told me that whatever computer site or whatever is there, whatever information he's getting, they are controlling him. So how could this happen? How could they? They were controlling every step of him, and they are telling today that this is a terrorist act. Never ever. This is not true. My 2 sons are innocent.
I haven't heard that on any mainstream media news source. I haven't heard ABC, PBS, CBS, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, any of them. I haven't heard them talk to the mother. Did anybody else hear that anywhere else? I didn't. I haven't heard that version of the story. The FBI has been controlling them for 5 years? If that's true, would it be a surprise that the FBI had a connection to a terror attack? Again, all the fake terror attacks that they've been caught, setting up FBI patsies, and then 1993 World Trade Center bombing, where they actually gave the guy the bomb. They built it for him pretty much. And then real live bomb, sent him on his way with it, and then boom, really killed people. Oh, but the FBI would never do that, right?
Taking what you're saying, I do take in what you're saying there, but I have to put to you, how can you explain the violent chase your sons were involved in early this morning, the use of explosives and the use of firearms?
I'm sorry?
I take in everything you say there, that you say your sons have been set up, but I'm asking you, please, if you can, I know it's a very difficult time for you, but can you explain, therefore, what the violent chase your sons were involved in was about this morning, and the fact that they were firing at police officers and throwing explosives out of the car at them?
To hear this news, of course, on Twitter.
Well, you mean the youngest one?
Well, I gather both were involved in this early morning chase, and both were firing and throwing explosives out of that SUV at the time. How can you explain their involvement in that?
I never believe into it. I never believe into it. I think that it is. I know my son never spoke about those things, and I am a mother. I raised them. They were highly intelligent. Whatever FBI, they were scared of my oldest son. They always told me that he is a leader. He is, they are afraid of him because they think that he is, he's a leader. He talks about Islam a lot, and they told me, but they were talking to my son, and they called me officially, and they told me that my son is an excellent boy, and they have no problem with that, with him. So at the same time, they were telling that he is like he's getting the information in really extreme sites. So they were kind of very, very afraid of him. So that's why I think that it is a set up.
Could you foresee any chance at all that maybe, and I know this must be very hard to take in as a parent, especially as a mother of your 2 sons, but there could have been a side to them that maybe you just didn't know, that they didn't let you in on?
My oldest son, who used to tell me everything, every day, every second day, my son used to call me and ask me, "How are you, Mama?" Both of them, "Mama, we love you. Mama, how are you? We miss you." It's impossible for both of them to do such things. So I'm really telling that this is a set up. My son would tell me. My son never would keep it in secret. So I would know, whoever would be knowing that if there is anyone who would know, it would be me, mother. He would never hide it from me. He would tell me that, but never ever even a word.
Zubaida, your youngest son, as we know at length, is on the run tonight. Boston is locked down. The police are looking for him. If by any chance he's got RT on, if by any chance he gets to hear you speak to him now, what would you say to him?
I would say, what would I say? I would say save your life and tell them the truth that you haven't seen or haven't done anything. That this is a set-up.
Okay, thank you, Zubaida Tsarnaeva, the mother of brothers Joka and Tamerlan Tsarnaev.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Now, again, some people can chalk it up to, like the host was asking, and it's a fair question to ask. I mean, he wasn't bashing her. It is a fair thing to say, well, are you sure that maybe they just had a side that you didn't know about? Which is fair to say, but the mother seems very adamant that the FBI had contacted her in the past, and that the FBI knew both her sons, and that the FBI was concerned about her son because her son perhaps had leadership potential and because he was a Muslim. So I guess the older one, the boxer, was the Muslim. But I do know that he wasn't, as far as, well, I shouldn't say I know for a fact, but I from what I've seen so far, he was trying to be, he wanted to box in the Olympics for the United States. So, I mean, if that's true, why would an Olympic hopeful go strap himself with bombs and kill not only innocent people, but hurt marathon runners? I mean, not just they're all innocent, but not only the people on the sidelines, the people watching, but the runners themselves. He's a fellow athlete. I mean, it flies in the face of a lot of stuff. It really does. So it makes you wonder, maybe they were, if the FBI, had, we'll say, I don't want to say they were handling them, but if the FBI had contact with them, maybe they told them something like, hey, we need you to take part in a drill or something and, play a part, and don't worry, there's nothing real or anything like. I'm not saying this is what happened, but don't worry, there's nothing real. Blah 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 blah. And then you do this, and we'll help you get on the Olympic team. Really? Yeah. We got pulled. Blah blah blah. But, cops lie, agents lie all the time. So who the hell knows? I mean, and that might not even happen. That's speculation, but it opens the door for you to have to look at it, and then we have to speculate and go down that road, even for a brief moment, to at least write the questions down that pop into our head. And then from there, if you have 15, 20 new questions, you decide what's valid. And, okay, well, that's kind of that really doesn't make sense, because you can look at some of the questions when you ask them, you can answer them yourself with the available evidence. And then what's left, you go from there. But we need to look at this stuff. We can't be afraid to perhaps speculate somewhat about some of this, right? Because if there's a connection there, it needs to be looked into, but I bet you it won't. If the guy dies, right, if he dies of his wounds, or he goes into a medically induced coma and never comes out, well, then we'll never have to worry, right? He'll be put away and locked in a hospital. It's just as good as medically, lobotomizing him and putting him in a mental institution, or them being dead, because then dead men tell no tales, right? We'll see. We shall see. One huge psychological operation. Stay tuned. All right, we are back. Short segment, and I want to play this one quick audio clip before I get into the psychological warfare, because I forgot I didn't play this for you, and I had mentioned it before, and I'd be remiss if I did not. So, here we go. As promised, I mentioned before that there were other people arrested early this morning, detained, photos, stripped down, and arrested nude in the street with their junk hanging out for all the video cameras to see. Let's listen to the CNN videographer who recorded it.
I'm going to now go to Drew Griffin, who was on the scene in Watertown, where these arrests have taken place. Drew, what can you tell us?
We just got a note, apparently, from State Police spokesman David Procopio, who, well, don't want to go with that just yet. I can tell you that we do believe, from the eyewitness account of Gabe Ramirez, our photojournalist, that 2 young men have been taken into some sort of custody here in Watertown. Both of them taken into custody in the area behind me, which is now about a 4 or 5 square block area that has been cordoned off, and there's a huge police presence here. And actually, we're going to have Gabe step right in here because he was... Gabe, you were positioned over behind us.
Dexter and Nichols.
And tell us what you saw from the moment you stepped on the scene.
So, I followed a couple of squad cars down to Nichols Street towards Dexter. It was immediately a chaotic situation. I jumped out. There were a couple of other journalists there. We ran towards the scene. The police had, from multitudes of agencies, all had their weapons drawn, pointing at a vehicle that we could not see from our vantage point. They were screaming for somebody to put his hands up, to get out of the car. At some point, he did do that, because then we could tell that the officers were relaxing. We still couldn't see the car or the suspect. Then at some point, they brought him from his vehicle to a police car. He was completely naked. He'd been, during the confrontation, I did hear him, and I believe you may be able to hear this on the tape we shot. They were ordering him to remove all his clothes, including his underwear. It was clear.
You heard the police officer say, remove all your clothes,
yes.
Remove your skivvies.
Exactly. So that's when they brought him completely naked into a police car.
Was he in handcuffs?
I believe he was cuffed, yes. He's been escorted, put in the car. So about 10 or 15 minutes ago, the FBI arrived.
When you said the FBI arrived,
yes.
What kind of vehicle and who came out of that vehicle?
Several FBI agents in various states of either civilian clothes or tactical gear, wearing their blue FBI jackets. They came out, they went to the vehicle where the suspect was seated and removed him from the vehicle at one point. Now, at this point, they'd gotten him dressed. He was still barefoot. He was wearing pants and a jacket. He handcuffed from behind. They led him away from the vehicle towards a wall of a business. They shined flashlights in his face, and it looked like they were taking photographs. I couldn't tell exactly what they were doing, but it looked like they were taking photographs of his face. Once they completed that, they walked him back to the vehicle and started to question him extensively for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then they put him back in the vehicle.
Let me just ask the control room, are we rolling any of the arrest video? And if we are, please...
And in the background, by the way, I got to give credit to moxnews.com because he's the one that uploaded it, but in the background he's got, why is there military at the crime scene? And you see military walking around, full-on fatigues, walking around. Looks like one of them has at least some sort of vest on, so whether it's a plate carrier or not.
Please say that in my ear when we're doing that. We are taking care not to show a naked man on TV.
Drew, can I...
You said...
Drew, if I could Drew, if I could interject for 1 second, I want to show the video that Gabe is referring to right now. We're going to pixelate some of it, obviously, because the individual had been stripped naked by law enforcement, presumably out of caution to make sure.
Now, we're coming up to the break, and that's about really all you need to hear. You can see the whole full thing over on Mox News' channel. It's FBI pulls suspect out of police car to photo him at crime scene. Again, the title of the video is FBI pulls suspect out of police car to photo him at crime scene. Now, you heard the guy say, well, it looked like they were photographing him, well, you know, but I really couldn't tell exactly if they were photographing him or not. Might not have been a camera. Might have been one of those neat little machines that does an iris scan and checks to see who you are. And then if they didn't have him in their little database, well, they do now. That's what I'll bet it was. But the point is this. Who are they? And where are they? And how come there's no follow-up? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and we are going to get into the psychological operations training video from the U.S. Army from 1955. And again, yes, they have newer methods, but these are still tried and true methods that they use to this very day. It's going to take up this whole segment, and then I will have to cram in the last, 2 minutes of it into the final segment. So stay tuned, hang in there, Get your wine, your beer, whatever your poison happens to be, perhaps even a glass of just water, and sit back and open your ears and your mind. You're about to learn how they screw with us. Here we go.
What is this man thinking? What does he feel? What will he do next? The answers to these questions are important to you, the American soldier. Your life, the security of your home and country may depend on them. For this man is your enemy or is a member of a neutral or friendly foreign group. He may carry a gun, push a plow, or run a machine. To win him over, to keep him from acting hostile to us, or to sustain his friendship by means other than force. That's the job of our psychological warfare. Psychological warfare aims at vital targets, thoughts, emotions, opinions, attitudes. It attempts to influence behavior by the planned use of propaganda. Many people think of propaganda as lies and distortions used by demagogues to arouse and incite. The Nazi propaganda minister Dr. Goebbels did his best to help this idea along. Actually, the word propaganda has no derogatory meaning. It comes from the Latin propagare, which means simply to spread about. It was first used by the Jesuits in 1622, when they began a college of propaganda which trained missionaries to serve in distant lands. Today, as the battle for men's minds is intensified, the spreading about of our democratic faith is becoming increasingly important. Our national foreign information programs are used to support the accomplishment of our national aims and policies. And in time of war, psychological warfare is used to support the accomplishment of a military mission. This film will emphasize the military aspects of psychological warfare. The use of psychological methods to influence enemy behavior in combat is not a new concept. An Athenian commander, Themistocles, in an attempt to discourage approaching enemy troops, urged them, if they could not lay down their arms, to behave ill on purpose. Our Continental Army used this type of leaflet at Bunker Hill to arouse discontent among the poorly paid enemy troops. In the Napoleonic Wars, from ships standing off the French coast, the British launched kites bearing anti-morale leaflets. The employment of military aircraft in World War I made possible the wide dissemination of propaganda leaflets. By World War II, new advances and operational techniques moved psychological warfare into high gear, made it an integrated part of our military organization. Experience has taught us that military action alone can win, but the costs in men and materials run high. Psychological warfare, effectively used in support of combat action, can reduce casualties and cost. Intelligence used as a basis for military psychological warfare operations comes chiefly from interrogation of prisoners of war, monitoring and analysis of enemy broadcasts and propaganda, captured enemy documents, and area studies. Reports are made available through G2 to the psychological warfare officer. Intelligence is studied for psychological warfare use. Enemy troop vulnerabilities are determined and plans drawn up to exploit them. There are three broad areas: tactical, strategic, and consolidation.
And by the way, when you hear the term enemy troops or enemy, just replace that with yourself. citizens, civilians.
In which psychological warfare supports the military mission. Tactical support is aimed at the civilians and enemy soldiers in the combat area. Objective, to remove as many as possible as hazards to our troops by reducing their combat efficiency and will to fight. One of the tactical military psychological warfare weapons is the loudspeaker. It has great mobility and can pinpoint its target. Through the loudspeaker, appeals and information based on combat intelligence can be swiftly and dramatically directed at the enemy soldier. To you soldiers of the 14th Regiment People's Army, we bring you news of home. Another tactical psychological warfare weapon is the leaflet. It may be used in a tactical situation. May be distributed by a propaganda shell fired from the 105 howitzer. The leaflet confronts the enemy soldier with a tangible propaganda message which he can keep and refer to. Leaflets also may be distributed by tactical, strategic, and liaison aircraft. This surrender leaflet was used against the enemy in North Korea.
And by the way, just think of leaflets. They still do leaflets, but just think of leaflets for the general public. Think of leaflets like texts, social media, and things like that, and the use of television. But I digress.
Though surrender may be one of the products of the tactical use of psychological warfare, you cannot judge the value of a psychological warfare operation by a head count of prisoners alone. The slow piling up of anxiety and discontent in the mind of the enemy soldier can be equally effective in reducing his combat efficiency. Cumulative effects of well-planned and executed campaigns may result in other forms of defection, such as malingering, mutiny, desertion, or sabotage.
Notice the general public, right? They turn each other in, they snitch on each other. They don't care. Everybody's got this malaise. I don't care. Fluoride. Starting to sound familiar?
Radio may be used tactically when it is known that there are enough enemy receivers in the target area to warrant its use. The second area in which psychological warfare assists the military is strategic support. This is aimed at personnel in the rear of the combat area. Objective, to exploit behind-the-lines tensions, weaken the efficiency of soldiers, and increase absenteeism of civilians upon whom the success of the enemy's military operations depends. Much of the information used in strategic support operations comes from area studies. These provide basic facts about a country's national life, and they offer effective themes for political, ethnic, religious, and cultural exploitation. This leaflet, used strategically against the North Korean farmers, urged them to pretend sickness and not work for the communists who are rounding up labor crews. The aim of this leaflet was to split the North Korean civilians from the communist political system by showing that their political leaders were mere puppets being pushed into war. The civilian bomb warning leaflet used in Korea tended to split the civilians from their leaders and portrayed the United Nations forces as humanitarian and just. In support of strategic operation, radio may be highly effective, limited only by the range of the transmitter and the availability of radio receivers.
The best part is the guy's face. There's this guy's face that shows up in the corner of the video. You can probably find this on YouTube. The title of the video is U.S. Military Psychological Operations. But you'll see it's about 9 minutes in. You'll see the guy's face in the corner. I swear to God, he looks like Henry Kissinger. I couldn't make this up.
Psychological warfare broadcasts are flexible and can be altered swiftly to fit a changing situation. The third area in which psychological warfare assists the military is consolidation support, aimed at civilians in liberated or occupied sections. Here, psychological warfare agencies work under control of the civil affairs and military government structure. The objective, to promote maximum cooperation among the local civilian population and to facilitate military operations by helping to secure and maintain law and order. Among the first directives issued in consolidation support would be curfew regulations and bans against the possession of weapons.
Curfew regulations and bans against the possession of weapons. Does that sound like any of the propaganda we hear today?
Later, as consolidation progresses, psychological warfare units furnish information on functional matters such as availability of electric power, water, and other vital resources and services. Voice planes offer wide dissemination of directives and other terse consolidation information. This type of leaflet was used in support of consolidation in an attempt to clear main supply routes of French civilians during the early stages of the Normandy landings. To support the accomplishment of the military objective, psychological warfare is provided with two main field operational units: the Radio Broadcast and Leaflet Battalion and the Loudspeaker and Leaflet Company. The Radio Broadcast and Leaflet Battalion consists of a headquarters company, a reproduction company, a radio broadcasting company, and a consolidation company, and is assigned to a theater headquarters and is used mainly in support of strategic and consolidation operations. The Loudspeaker and Leaflet Company consists of a headquarters company, publications platoon, operations platoon, and a loudspeaker platoon, and is assigned to a field army and supports mainly tactical operations. The Chief of Psychological Warfare is directly responsible to the Army Chief of Staff for psychological warfare plans, operations, organization, and training.
I'm going to pause it right there, and I'll pick it up with the last few minutes on the other side of the break in the final segment. But any of this sounding familiar, ladies and gentlemen? My favorite example is the example they give of the enemy propaganda and spray painted on the wall in Korea was, don't fight for your Wall Street masters. Go home, American soldiers. Don't fight for your Wall Street masters. Sick bastards never change. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment of this Friday episode. Final segment for this week. Nice. I need the weekend. It's been a rough week. No sleep. Not that really going to get much sleep anyway, but it'd be nice to be able to take maybe get an extra 15 or 20 minutes of sleep. Anyway, let's get back to the video because we only have a few minutes left. So here's the final, 3.5, 4 minutes of the U.S. military psychological operations, and it left off that the guy in control of all of it sits where but at the Pentagon.
The United States has no monopoly on psychological warfare. The enemy has used it against our troops. Here is an example of enemy military propaganda disseminated in a simple way.
This is the one I was telling you about, spray painted on like this bombed out wall, and it says, quote, Die for Wall Street? ? No. Demand giving up, fighting, and go home. Propaganda. Again. Die for Wall Street? ? No. Demand giving up, fighting, and go home. That's enemy propaganda. If you don't want to fight war, well then you must be listening to the enemy propaganda. You can't be human at all.
The soldier's natural longing for home is exploited in this enemy's leaflet.
Darling, I will dream that you are coming back to me this Christmas. I can't think of a Christmas without you.
In cooperation with your unit commander, troop information and education programs surround you with unbiased facts and learning.
Is that what you call it? Unbiased facts and learning. Like a trained seal.
So that you know the truth, can have confidence and faith in your mission. Every available information and education medium is used to arm you against the distortions and falsehoods of enemy psychological warfare. Your Army explains the democratic principles you're fighting for, shows you your stake in the issues, keeps you up to date on what's going on at home and abroad, lets you sound off when you've got something on your mind. The enemy's psychological warfare operations lean heavily on distorting the facts. The leaflet on the left, dropped in Korea by the communists, was designed to split the American soldier from the civilians at home and attempts to show him that he is fighting for a system filled with capitalist decay. This picture was lifted by the communists from an American magazine advertising a name brand cigar and retouched to produce the glasses on the table. But the enemy's propaganda distortions have less likelihood of success against you, the American soldier. In an army devoted to freedom, you have the truth available to you. These, plus your own sense of loyalty and patriotism, are your best defenses against enemy propaganda. We have shown you some of the methods and potentialities of military psychological warfare. Its success and value to the armed forces of our country has been officially recognized by the President of the United States, who has said, without doubt, psychological warfare has proven its right to a place of dignity in our military arsenal.
Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? They use this against us to this very day. Now, some of the methods might be a little different. They might be tweaked because of technology today. They don't have to drop leaflets over a city. That's what the mainstream media is good for, right? Television in every household. It's even, well, radio, I don't want to say it's better than radio, because radio can also reach the car, but it's got the potential to reach just as many. So some of the technology might have advanced, but the methods are still the same. The reason is still the same. Once you see this stuff, once you put on the sunglasses, once you're like Neo in the end of the Matrix, where you looking down the hallway, you can see the code, you can see things for what it is, you can never turn it off. And that is what I aim to do with this broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to give you a gift that you'll never have to turn off. The gift to see through the bullshit. With that, I'm out of here. I love you all.